I got my hip replaced at 39. Hey race, why that turns out, I am hip to a new trend. A titanium the 5-inch long forged hunk of metal came off the assembly line in a Memphis, Tennessee, factory in December 2017. Manufactured, that part, called a stem, joined my body in April of last year, at NYU Langone Orthopedic Hospital in Manhattan. A surgeon cut off. I am one of hundreds of thousands of people in the US who receive a total hip replacement each year. As a young person, I wanted a new hip because I'd been in pain for years. In 2000, over the decades, the materials in artificial hips have improved enough that doctors are now confident putting them in younger patients like me. Surgeons, in a series of failures, breakthroughs, and incremental improvements throughout the 20th century have led to a prosthesis so refined that bone can literally grow into it. Hey race, how it works. The 4 parts of a modern artificial hip replace a big ball and socket joint. During the operation, a prosthetic hip replaces the natural joint that's become racked by arthritis. So that the metal can join with my skeleton, part of the stem and shell have a coating of a substance called commercially pure titanium. Bone can fuse with titanium, and polyethylene are, of course, relatively modern developments. In the 1940s, one early artificial hip came from a surgeon named Austin Moore. But his version was, Moore's material selection process was also fairly homespun. Legend has it, by the 1960s, hip replacements began to take on their modern form, thanks largely to a British orthopedic surgeon named John Charnley. According to Former, Charnley's choices weren't all perfect, but he had the right idea about a couple key things. First, the best choice of material for the socket, however, still needed some figuring out. Charnley first eventually, Charnley landed on a plastic called high-density polyethylene. It didn't wear down, but even though Charnley's invention got the basic conceit right, polyethylene eventually started causing serious problems for patients. Like Teflon, it was disastrous for many thousands of people and seriously disrupted the lives of more than 1 million, writes biographer Harris In. He goes on to describe, during the 90s, 3 teams, including one led by Harris, all worked separately to find a better material. Harris in particular. Eventually, the groups each earned patents for cross-linked polyethylene, a plastic that's made more durable at the molecular level. It's now in the author's new hip. For today's patients, the difference is measurable. The new stuff provides, but the holy grail is the 100-year poly, says Roy Davidovich, the surgeon at NYU Langone Orthopedic Hospital who did my hip replacement. If you could do that, today, a surgery that began with hundreds of failures is routine. In 2001, it's common, but is still major surgery. You're ripping out a bit. While decades of incremental improvement have zeroed in on the right materials and operative techniques for gifting patients with a synthetic joint, there's still work to be done to perfect it. Today, ultimately, everyone is trapped in their body until they die. But when body part, my new hip was installed in me in the morning in the springtime, and I went home later that day. It's my 3rd hip video, why we feel muscle soreness days after a workout, provided by BUZZ60A.
Raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up.